Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be She Belongs to the Streets. Well, I've got an email here from a guy. It's a pretty interesting story. He's an older guy. He's 35, and his now ex girlfriend is 21. They were together for about 3 years. And she had a pretty dodgy past. I won't give it all away, but we'll get into it in a few minutes. But what's interesting is that after, mostly it seems like a fairly normal relationship for about the last 2.5 years, she admits about 6 months ago that she cheated on him about a month after they started dating and became exclusive. And so when you hear all the stuff that she's into or gotten into and the kind of people that she hangs out with, obviously you'll see that the title really matches the description of this. And so what's interesting is when this guy met her, she had this dodgy past, but she had kind of put all that behind him. And so he just met what he thought was this really nice girl. And because he saw her after she'd kind of gone through that and gotten out of that bad lifestyle. And when she later on, as he got to know her, told him about all the things she had done and was involved in, and he was shocked. He had a hard time even believing that was her. But after about 3 years, she broke up with him a few months ago, and they kind of went right back down that same kind of rabbit hole. And obviously, he's moving on. She offered to be friends with benefits, but his opinion is, if she comes back and say several months, 5 months, whatever it happens to be, and wants another chance, should I give her one? And so I see so many situations like this, whether there's infidelity, talking to guys where they're, like I talked to one the other day, he'd been with his wife for over 10 years and she had cheated on him multiple times and he had forgiven her. And this last time, obviously, just like when he really found out, it's like this woman just had no intention of honoring any kind of commitment to him. What was really interesting is she was really pursuing him hard, and really after getting married and being into an exclusive relationship within just a few months of meeting. And so it's just interesting to see that a lot of insecurity in her. And then when he told me her past and her history, and because it's tough when you really love somebody, and in that case, you've been together 10, 12 years. It's not like you just flip a switch and like, oh yeah, I'm gonna walk away. That's easy for somebody to sit there and say something like that. But when somebody's in this situation themselves and they're all emotionally wrapped up in this person, it's hard for them to make that kind of a rational decision. That's why a lot of guys will do phone sessions and tell me exactly what's going on with their situation and obviously the past that's going on, because they know I'm going to give them the unvarnished real truth, because obviously my work has helped them so much, especially my first book, 3% Man, that they want to hear it from me. So if they do decide to pull the plug, they've kind of got peace of mind knowing that they did everything they could, but they just, were trying to have the kind of relationship that they wanted with somebody that's just simply not capable of that. So with that said, I got a quote that I wrote, and then we'll jump into his email. And so the quote says, when it comes to relationships, you can't make good wine from bad grapes. If you are looking for a loyal, healthy, exclusive, monogamous relationship, women who make the best candidates come from good homes and families where the parents are great teammates and communicate and work out their differences in a healthy manner. Their father is the leader and head of the household and in his masculine energy. He is never a doormat. He sets and enforces healthy boundaries. The mother is a nurturer, feminine, and submissive to the husband's leadership. Women who grow up in toxic environments where a strong, stable masculine presence is missing, or there is cheating, lying, and infidelity, never learn what healthy is, looks like, and feels like. They become emotionally anchored to and seek out drama-filled relationships because that feels normal to them. Never make the mistake of thinking it's your job to fix or save someone. It's your job to find a good, healthy match and teammate and walk away from toxic people. Your sanity and emotional health depends upon it. I remember there was a book years ago. It was a little skinny one. I think it was called Life's Little Instruction Book. And I still remember this day. I was at a friend's house and was taking a piss, and it was like sitting on top of his toilet tank. So I started flipping through it, and there was a quote in there. It said, "Choose very carefully the person that you spend your life with, because 95% of your happiness or your misery will come from that one decision." Pretty wise statement and very true. And in the work that I do, I've seen these situations now like thousands and thousands of times over the years, and it's like you just see the same thing over and over. The likelihood that a woman that comes from a broken home or grew up without a father, and that she's going to do enough work on herself, maybe through therapy or self-help or personal growth, whatever it happens to be, so they can become healthy and learn what healthy is, the odds of that happening are so slim. But it is possible. It's just the likelihood, it's just the numbers, the odds are just not in your favor. So with that said, let's go through this guy's email. He says, "Hey Corey, several years ago I met a younger girl. She's 21, I'm 35. What started like a flirtation just for sex ended up like a relationship. She was very sexually active before that and had some really bad experiences with BDSM. That's bondage, domineering. I'm sure somebody knows the acronyms for those, but it's all the bondage and submissiveness and all that kind of stuff." He says, "We're both into that, which when much younger, she tried sex for money and didn't want to ever do that again." That's a red flag. Because she was young and stupid, she didn't play carefully and got injured and raped. She was angry about her past life and wanted to change that. So obviously she had an emotionally painful experience. Remember from Aristotle, and I talk about that in Mastering Yourself, that the pain and pleasure principle. People will do more to avoid pain than they'll do to gain pleasure. And in this case, she obviously had a very emotionally, mentally, and physically painful experience, and it caused her to have one of those moments where she's like, "That's it, enough of this. I'm not going to have this happen to me ever again." And then he happened to meet her I don't know how long after that, but it sounds like shortly after that, and she was a completely different person from who she used to be. He says, "When I had met her, she seemed like a totally different person, and I couldn't believe that past actually belonged to her. We were together for nearly 3 years, started to live together, and got pets. Last half a year, so last 6 months that they were together," he says, "that she confessed that she cheated on him in the first month of the relationship because she was young and stupid." Obviously, that's a sign that even though she had made a commitment to him, that she didn't really care. And so she did that, never told him, and that was obviously one of who knows how many lies and things she hid from him, the deviousness. He says she felt bad for herself and never did it again. Not that I know of. Here you probably looked in the camera and laughed. I'm a very tolerant guy. Yep. I'm not going to laugh because you did it for me. I laughed when I was reading it because I thought it was humorous. He says, "I live and work with young people, and that's why I prefer younger girls, because I like the young, or that young drive. Except these things, she was totally mature. I was actually surprised how much my life was easy with her. My previous partner was 33 years old and was a fucking kid compared to that. Finances, sex, cleaning up, vacations, everything was great. So she seemed like, from his experience, that everything seemed normal, that she had gone through some really traumatic times before they met, and she seemed to have her shit together." So he says, "Here it comes. This spring, she got drinking with her friends, and they went home. She stood there with some guys that were buying her drinks, and because her phone battery was dead, she agreed to come to their place and charge it in order to call an Uber." Sure, buddy. "Of course, they took her like 10 miles away from the club by a cab. She called me and sounded scared and really drunk, so I called her dad, who had a location app on her, and we found her there. She was scared and then that guy ran away from me, and then she was angry with me for not believing that nothing happened. After some time, I forgave that because she was really drunk and I couldn't prove anything anyway. Yeah, it's like you don't want to hear that your girlfriend of 3 years who you live with and you got pets goes off to the club with some of her girlfriends, gets a little drunk, her friends leave her there, and then she goes home with a bunch of random dudes just to charge her cell phone. She obviously was thinking about doing more than getting her cell phone charged. From this point, suddenly, she started to be annoyed with my jokes, started to have cabin fever. I mean, she could hang out even with her exes in a group, and I would just say, have fun, honey. Let the door open. Let them come back thing. So I really didn't know what was the source of that. And when asked, she never answered for some reason. And by the way, this guy lives in Europe. So I don't think I think he's German because English is obviously not his first language. So eventually she told me always that she got used to my jokes and stuff and it's not a big deal, but started totally stupid arguments for nothing more and more. So when women do that, when women just create arguments out of nothing, they're either trying to shake things up because they're bored and see how you'll handle it. Maybe you've displayed weakness in the past. Or what oftentimes happen is the arguments and the blow-ups become bigger and bigger and bigger until you have one big fight and then she breaks up with you in that big fight. So obviously that's a sign that her attraction was going the wrong direction. And obviously I assume cabin fever, probably they were locked down and so they spent a lot more time together than normal. He says, one day we had sex and she told me that she loves me, and the other day she gave me a goodbye. Like in 4 days, she was on, so I guess that means she broke up with him. He says, like in 4 days, she was on a BDSM dating site looking for action. I shut the door, as you write in your book. I ignored her proposing to be friends with benefits, explained that I want the whole package, but not this. Last thing I know, some guy on cocaine beat her up, and she needed to go to the hospital. He says, karma, huh? You are who you associate with. Obviously, she started hanging out with some very dodgy people. In other words, she kind of went right back into that same old lifestyle. Now, granted, she's 21. She's young. She doesn't have a lot of life experience. But women that come from good families, they don't get involved in this kind of bullshit. They don't go out and do these kinds of stupid things because their parents, especially their mother, knows how to prepare their daughter for these kinds of situations. I know all of my friends who got teenage daughters, and even my old girlfriend of mine whose daughter is now an adult. These are conversations that you have as they start to get a little older, and you talk about roofies and people spiking your drinks and not going back to some dude's place and drinking something that he gives you, because then that's how you get date raped. And girls that have good relationships with their mom and their dad will listen to that advice and heed it because they respect their parents and they respect their relationship and they want to be safe. But girls that come from broken homes, there's nobody there to teach them these things, and there's nobody that they trust enough to listen. And if they grow up in a dysfunctional environment, that, like the quote said, it's normal to them. That feels normal. Healthy, working things out, talking things out, that is just something they're not used to. They're not experienced. So how could they possibly have the life experience to be able to have that kind of a good, healthy relationship if that's what you're looking for? He says, I totally didn't recognize this person. She started to crave even for things that offended her before, like some old guys in clubs proposing sex for money. She started to crave the attention even from people she didn't like. Definitely sounds like she's got some daddy issues, like she didn't get enough hugs from her dad. He says, which is very probably even related to the fact that she started to drink a lot. He says, now I see two totally different people. If somebody would have told me she is coming back in 5 months, I would say, well, if I am single, maybe. But when I see what kind of life she is returning to and trying to live, even when she hated that. Sorry, I can't have that person around. That is absolutely spot on correct. And that is the right instinct. That's the truth right there. He says, now, can you please tell me your opinion? I tried to be a good boyfriend. I paid attention, gave her surprise flowers and other gifts, took her to clubs she liked, but also insisted on doing things that I liked. I think I managed to keep things in the middle, as I figured out you are supposed to. None of our friends understand this either, and her friends sided up with me, telling me that they never heard any real complaints about me. The reason she gave me after the breakup was that she just figured out she is still young and wants to be single. I'd say that's an excuse. Probably your interest dropped, probably being quarantined together and spending a lot more time. Maybe you slacked off, you stopped being the same masculine guy that you were before the lockdowns and displayed a bunch of weakness. And maybe you were the perfect boyfriend for 2.5 years and you did more right than wrong. And so she stayed with you, and other than the first few months or the first month that you were exclusive, it appears, but we can't know for certain whether or not, but it seems like potentially she was mostly faithful other than that one time at the beginning, but we don't know. We really don't know. It's like flip a coin. It could go either way. But the fact that she's out there doing this, and it's like when I have conversations with guys and they're telling me about their girlfriend and how things were great for so long, and then things went sideways, and then I find out about the history of the woman, the fact that she cheated on other boyfriends or husbands, guys that she had been with, but she treated him good up until a point. It's like these kinds of women, if they're happy and their needs are being met and they're loved, they typically, for the most part, will be faithful. But as soon as they start, the attraction drops, they go right back to getting their needs fulfilled elsewhere and having somebody else rearrange their insides, beating up their pelvis, so to speak. He says, and related to that, she made these jokes and other problems much bigger. Well, as I talk about in 3% Man, women tend to take the little things and blow them up into big problems. And it's your job as a man to kind of listen and shrink those down, like I discuss in my book. But again, it's like she's picking fights at this point because her interest had dropped for whatever reason. And she's picking fights because that's how she creates the drama to ultimately have a breakup and say, hey, I'm out of here. He says, still, I saw this total switch in character, and I couldn't believe she is returning to the group of people that got her hurt before and now again. It's why she belongs to the streets, my man. It's not your fault, dude. You gave this girl a chance for, it seems like, other than in the very beginning, for about 2.5 years, she seemed like a decent girlfriend. But again, you don't really know. You don't really know what she was doing when you're away from her. And it's obvious that you can't trust that. She's a liar. She's devious. She's a cheater. And obviously it sounds like she's definitely got an alcohol problem. Probably, I assume if she's hanging out with dudes doing cocaine and stuff like that, I would imagine she's doing drugs as well, especially girls that do cocaine, because cocaine makes you really horny. And women give up the pussy pretty easily for cocaine if they're into that. He says, I don't know if she deserves another chance because got strong feeling this type of person would simply do it again in a few years. But then again, it could just be an age thing. Please tell me your opinion. Well, I think you're spot on. You got this strong feeling that she would just do it again in a few years. You're absolutely right. Say you give her another chance, and then you take her back and things are good for a while. As soon as, what happens? You have a couple kids together, and you get busy and you get caught up in life or work or your job or whatever, and you stop dating and courting her properly. You're absolutely right. She'll probably cheat on you again. I mean, just look at her actions. It's like the quote says, it's not your job to fix this girl or to save her or to solve her problems. I mean, this is who she was before she met you. And for the most part, it seems like she wasn't that way when she was with you. But as soon as her interest dropped, she was right back out on the streets. So my opinion is she's a fuck buddy, friends with benefits, sex playmate, maybe an open relationship. But obviously, a woman's into this kind of thing. You don't know who she's having sex with. I would definitely always use a condom with a woman like this, just because you don't want to get the gift that keeps on giving. It's like people that sleep around a lot, even guy friends I've got, dudes that I know that like picking up different women, and it's a fun thing for them. A lot of them, they don't end up wearing condoms, and you sleep with enough random women without a condom, and eventually you're going to get something. Every guy that I know that I've been friends with and known over the course of my life that does that, it's like they always get something eventually. It's a numbers game. So if you're going to get involved with women like this, or you're going to live that kind of a lifestyle where you're very promiscuous, it's like you're a fool if you think you're just going to keep banging different women in the raw and nothing's going to happen to you. It's just a numbers thing. And you know what's interesting is I read a story a couple years ago about online dating, and how what is interesting for people in the medical community is how many older people, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s that are coming to the office with herpes and chlamydia and gonorrhea and all these different venereal diseases because of the dating apps. And so, their spouse dies or they get divorced or whatever, and they're on the dating apps and they start hooking up with random women. And it's like, it happens. It doesn't matter whether you're young or you're old. It's, the gift that keeps on giving is out there. So, gentlemen, you gotta wear your raincoat. If you're gonna get into some strange that you don't know where it's been, then there's risks associated with that. So, is it really worth it? And if you're gonna take the risk, it's much better to wear a raincoat. But like I said, this chick belongs to the streets. It's like I would never give her another chance. She'll be faithful and loyal as long as she's happy and her needs are being met. And as soon as she's not, she's out the door riding some other dude's cock. That's, unfortunately, it's the way it is. But that she's a product of her environment. She's a product of how she was raised. And she was like this before you met her. And she's going to continue to be this way. And now she's really somebody else's problem. And like the quote says, if you're looking for somebody to have some kind of healthy, normal, exclusive relationship, she just doesn't have those characteristics. She doesn't have the background for it. So therefore, how could she possibly develop that kind of a value system? How could she even possibly have those goals? She might want to have those goals, but you look at her actions. She belongs to the streets. So it is what it is. So obviously you can get these sweet mugs on Teespring at the Coach Corey Wayne store, and you can read my first book, Mastering Yourself. Second book, Mastering Yourself. First book, 3% Man, for free at understandingrelationships.com. All you got to do is subscribe to the email newsletter. And if you're in a situation you'd like to get my opinion on it, and you're all emotionally wrapped up, and it's just hard to know which way to go, and you want the unvarnished truth, in my opinion, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.